So let's talk about everything that Samsung just announced because Samsung did announce a whole bunch of products recently, and let's talk about everything they just announced. First off, let's start off with their main attraction, and of course, that would be the Note 20 line. I'm not going to talk about everything, I'm kind of just going to pretty much give my thoughts and opinions here. First off, they're going to be making two variants of the Note 20, just like last year's Note 10. We are talking about a budget oriented Note 20, and then we are going to have a Note 20 Ultra, and both of these smartphones are going to be very expensive. It's kind of interesting to me when we look at both versions of the Note 20. It still kind of puzzles me to why Samsung really does make a much more cheaper version of the Note line, but for some reason they decide to price it extremely expensive, and it's still competing with a lot of other top branded flagship smartphones of the world. Like for instance, you look at the price of the Note 20 Basic, and it starts at $1,000 US, and that's very expensive when you can get other smartphones on the market around that price. And the Note 20 Ultra is going to cost around $1,300, so that you can see both of these devices are very expensive devices. Honestly, coming from me, I would have really liked it if somehow Samsung would have made a budget-oriented version of the Note 20, but for some reason price it a little bit lower, maybe $800, maybe $700, just because you are losing features that you would be getting on the Note 20 Ultra that do make it a much more appealing device for some people out there, and a lot of these specs you are losing in the Note 20 Basic, and you do have to realize there are other options on the market around that price, like the iPhone, of course, like other Android manufacturers, and even the recent Samsung Galaxy S20. It's kind of funny, even though it is another Samsung branded smartphone, they are competing with themselves, because you do have to take in consideration as well that device has been on the market since the beginning of the year, and as time goes on, of course, you see a lot of deep discounts for that device. And a lot of times if someone's looking at, for instance, like the basic Note 20 that costs $1,000, you can get the S20 for way much cheaper than probably what you could get for the Note 20. And in a lot of situations, actually, it might have slightly better specs, and it might have some other features that you couldn't get on the Note 20. Granted, of course, you wouldn't be getting that S Pen support that you would be getting on the Note 20, of course, and that is probably the one reason why a lot of people look at the Note line to begin with, because they need a device with a pen. They do a lot of tasks that do require them to take notes and things like that, and that's where the Note line really stands out compared to the competition and compared to what's on the marketplace. That's why, but that's just something I keep noticing about them making two versions of the Note ever since last year. I just don't think it really makes a lot of sense the way they have both of these devices priced, especially the much more budget-oriented one, if you can even call it a budget option, at $1,000. I just think that's a little bit too high. But besides that, there's nothing I can really say about these phones that a lot of people already don't know about these phones. These phones are just a monster when it comes to Android smartphones, or when it comes to smartphone technology as a whole. This is going to be the cream of the crop. If you want the best processor, we're talking about the Snapdragon 865, and I think in the Note 20 Ultra, we're talking about the 865 Plus. We're talking about 12 gigs of RAM. We're talking about on the Ultra 1440p screen. On the base Note 20, we're talking about 1080p. We're also talking about higher refresh rate on the Ultra. You can see the Ultra, after everything I'm just saying, it really does seem like it just makes sense to just step up to the Ultra, because you are sacrificing some stuff when it actually comes to the base Note 20, and that's where I really think Samsung just priced it wrong, because it's not that much higher for the Note 20. Yes, it is a couple more $100 for that phone, but it's just not that much cheaper, honestly, is what basically I'm saying. So overall, these are going to be monster phones when these things actually comes out, and I am glad that they're finally realizing that every device that they make from here on out needs to have a higher refresh rate screen, because it does make their user interface really fast, really fluid. You get an overall better sense of the UI and a better experience when you actually have those higher refresh screens. I'm just actually also puzzled to why, for some reason, Samsung didn't put that higher refresh rate screen on the Note 20 budget option, because they could have easily done it, but I guess it makes sense. They had to give a reason to why you wouldn't want to buy that phone, why you would want to step up to the Note 20 Ultra, so they had to do that. One thing I'm not a fan of with Samsung and with their refresh rates on their phone, I'm not actually a fan of them actually locking you into certain resolutions for the frame rate. Like, for instance, if you want a much more smoother experience, like 120 hertz on the display, you can't actually do 1440p or 2K resolution on the display. You have to purposely go down to 1080p. I think Samsung did this because they knew they had a lot of battery problems with the specifically, I think, Note 7, and that one was plagued with batteries overheating, batteries exploding, just having a whole bunch of problems. And I still think that even though they fixed most of those problems, and you haven't heard about battery issues with Samsung devices ever since the Note 7, I still think in the back of their head, they're probably like, yeah, we're still kind of scared about that, and we're not too sure if under heavy load these things will survive, so we want to make sure this never happens again. So we're going to do some quality control when it comes to the performance, so we're not going to give you those options. It should be up to each individual user. Yes, I'll lose battery at the cost of my performance being higher, or I can save some battery and not make the screen as like nice looking, but get better frame rates and things like that. That's something I just wish Samsung would do, regardless if it takes a toll on your battery. And I'm pretty sure at this point it probably wouldn't damage your battery, but I know what Samsung is actually thinking there. Another thing I'm not really too big a fan of is some of these displays that do have waterfall displays. You can see on the Note 20 Ultra, I think the Note 20 has it too. Correct me if I'm wrong, but basically it does have a waterfall display, and honestly, I'm not really a big fan of waterfall displays. I've used waterfall displays, but I do not like them. And if you don't know about waterfall displays is when the sides of the screen are actually curved, and the reason I'm not a fan of that is because, one, you can do accidental presses on the screen when the screen is curved, but more so, the reason I don't like them is because if you're a person that watches a lot of media, especially video, on your device, you can see where some of the edges of the actual video do actually have this roundness effect, and I'm not really too big of a fan of this roundness effect that videos do get when you watch them on these curved displays. I wish smartphone manufacturers would move away from this technology. I'm just not big of a fan of it, but I know why they do it. They do it because they think it's more futuristic. It makes the device look more premium, just look more better off. But in my eye, it's not actually practical. I think it's a little less practical, but I do think it looks nice. It's just not that practical. And yeah, I guess the only thing bad about these phones are they are going to have slightly smaller batteries than their S20 counterparts, unfortunately. But again, I think for most people, it's not going to be a big deal about battery being a little bit less, just due to the fact that these phones will get amazing battery. The software is optimized, and you're not losing that much battery here. The one nice thing about the Note 20 Ultra specifically is going to be the fact that the S Pen is going to run much more smoother on that device, because you do get the higher refresh rates. So if you do opt to get the 120 hertz refresh rate, you will get very smooth scrolling. It's not like the Note 20 budget option doesn't get smooth scrolling, because apparently from what Samsung said, Samsung did state that now the S Pen is going to be much more faster and much more fluid and much more responsive, because the latency on the pen is actually gone down. I think last year and every previous Note device from Samsung has had somewhere in the lines of 40 millisecond delay when it comes to the pen touching the glass, but now it's all the way down to 9 milliseconds, and that's great, because now it'll pretty much feel like you're writing on paper when you're actually writing on the display. It's not like before it was junk or anything. It was still good, but anytime you can lower the latency of the pen, that's actually great news, because you do have to realize a lot of people who are actually looking at the Note line compared to any other smartphone on the market is, of course, the S Pen support, and that's a big reason why you would buy these. So, of course, you want the S Pen experience to be nice as possible on these phones. And yeah, they look like they are going to be the best phones money can buy, depending on what you're looking at, depending on your needs, depending if you're in the Android ecosystem. Overall, they look like very great smartphones for what they are, and of course, you won't be disappointed with these phones. And I guess another thing I didn't touch on is the fact that these phones are pretty big phones. The Note 20 Ultra, I think, is 6.9 inches, and that's very big. And I know a lot of people will be turned off by the screen being this big just because it's not really pocketable. It's not really something you can fit in, you can really hold in one hand. This is a two-handed device for the most part, but I guess it makes sense. A lot of people who are using this phone are specifically using it for the S Pen, and if you're going to be writing a lot with the S Pen, of course, you want the bigger display so you have more room to write, of course, and that's what they did here with this device. But overall, yes, two great smartphones from Samsung. Nothing else I can really say about these devices other than the fact that they are expensive, but you get your money's worth out of Samsung. Samsung really knows how to make their smartphones stand out, and they know how to make good quality smartphones. Now, the next one, of course, is more Samsung news because there is a lot of stuff that they did announce. The next one up is actually the Samsung Galaxy Tab S7 and S7 Plus, because you do have two versions of the Samsung's next tablet. And I think this year Samsung actually really hit it out of the park when it comes to the Samsung Galaxy Tab S7 and S7 Plus. I really do think this one is actually a much more appealing option compared to the iPad Pro. If we look at Samsung's last generation tablets, the Samsung Galaxy Tab S6, I thought that was a pretty good tablet, but there were some key features missing from that tablet that didn't actually occur on the iPad Pro, where I felt like the iPad Pro overall won out compared to the competition. But this year, Samsung has really stepped up their game. Like, for instance, the biggest thing with the Tab S7 and Tab S7 Plus is the fact that you are going to be getting higher refresh rates on the screen. You are going to be getting 120 hertz, and that is a thing that I really do wish the S6 had, but for some reason it just did not have that technology, and that's something that was a reason to actually buy the iPad Pro over the S6 tablet. But now Samsung finally incorporated it to their tablets, and that actually is a game changer. Again, it does mean you will get higher you will get overall better performance out of the device. The UI will be more smoother. Just everything will just be more nicer to use when you have that higher refresh rate. And alongside that, of course, you will have better performance on the S Pen with latency, again, because you will have that higher refresh rate. They did lower the latency on the pen. So overall, you do have that. And honestly, I just think this is overall a really good, compelling tablet over last year's offerings from Samsung. And on top of that, I really do think this could actually go head to head with something like the iPad Pros that Apple do offer. One thing I really still do like about Samsung tablets, I like the fact now they do support DeX on all their devices, whether it's their Android smartphones or whether it's their tablet line. And I really do think a lot of people who are using their tablet line, I think, are really going to want to use DeX, because you have to take in consideration that the Tab S7 and S7 Plus are very expensive devices. So most of the time when you actually go out and want to buy a device this expensive, you're looking to do some real work here. And I really do think that this is where the S7 and S7 Plus shine in the DeX compatibility. If you don't know about DeX, which some people may not know about DeX, DeX is pretty much an implementation of a regular desktop class OS like Windows or like Mac OS on MacBooks. However, you're still running in kind of a mobile OS type situation. It just mimics some of the features that you can get on desktop class OSs. Like, some of the key big standouts, of course, are going to be Windows. You do have Windows. You can actually resize. You can actually move around. And of course, it really does support keyboard input and trackpad support extremely well. And that's where I think this tablet has a leg up over the competition, especially the iPad. The iPad Pro is an amazing tablet. You can get some real work done on the iPad Pro, but the biggest downside with the iPad Pro is when you go ahead and connect something like the Magic Keyboard to the Pro, it is a nice device, but it still does pretty much mimic the same type of experience you would get whether you're hand holding it or whether you're using that Magic Keyboard. You still kind of got that touch input type user interface whether you use the keyboard or not, and I think that's kind of a downside because why would you want the same experience when you're actually using the Magic Keyboard? Because let's face it, that user interface is meant for touching it, is meant for pretty much when you're hand holding the device, and Samsung really did realize that, oh, a lot of people want to get work done. Why would they want to actually use a keyboard and a trackpad but have it mimic the same Android experience you would get when you're actually using it in your hand? So let's make this brand new operating system called Dex, which still uses a lot of Android's architecture, but you do get resizable windows now. It just overall feels a little bit more like you can get actual work done with the device. So if you need to get some actual work done, I really do think the Tab S7 can be a monster with it. And apparently from what I heard, from some sources out there, I heard that the keyboard stand, and the keyboard overall has been improved from last year. I know a lot of people were actually complaining about the durability of the keyboard last year from the Tab S6. I heard that the stand could actually fall off if you weren't careful, and things like that. So it is nice. They are working to make that accessory a little bit more better. The only downside to the keyboard that does come with the Tab S7, or when you buy it extra, of course, since it is an extra fee, I do believe, is the fact that it is a device that doesn't come with a backlight on it, which is kind of puzzling to me just because you are trying to get some real work done, and in some scenarios you may need to use this device like in a dark room and things like that, and you may need your keyboard lit up, which is kind of unfortunate. They don't actually support this for whatever the case may be. I'm not quite sure why that is, but that is the case here. But overall, this really does seem like a very nice offering from Samsung, and I really do think for some people out there this can actually beat the iPad Pro. The only downside to this tablet compared to what Apple can offer with the iPad Pro, of course, is always going to be the app selection and the app compatibility, because let's face it, Apple does have more apps that are dedicated and designed for the iPad Pro, whereas the Tab S7 Android tablets have always been inferior when it comes to software support, and when it also comes to things like, for instance, app support. There's not a lot of apps that actually utilize the big displays of the Tab S7. You are talking about a lot of smartphone apps just being like blown up to a bigger display, and in a lot of scenarios that's just not great. I guess on the topic of the Tab S7 line, they did decide to make the displays much more bigger here. Last generation, we were talking about the Tab S6 having only a 10.5-inch screen, whereas this year we are talking about, I think, an 11-inch and a 12.4-inch. So you can see they understand why people would need bigger displays, and I agree there. I think for tablets, it is nice to have that bigger display option, just because, again, when you're looking at these devices and for them being as expensive as they are, I really do think that a lot of people out there do want to get some real work done, and you can't really get too much real work done if you have a small display. So anytime the display is bigger, that does mean you can do more on your device, and you can see more on your device, and it's just overall, I think, more comfortable to actually use a bigger display device like this. So that is nice. They decided to actually make the display actually really nice in the Tab S7, which is actually really nice. Another thing they did announce here at for Samsung is they did actually announce some brand new earbuds from Samsung. They actually added some new Galaxy Buds, and these Galaxy Buds look really interesting. They are kind of expensive, of course. They are in the realms of like the base iPad, the base AirPods from Apple and things like that, but I think they're not too high for what they are. I think they're going for about 170. Yes, there are a lot of different manufacturers that do make true wireless earbuds, but I think these ones do have a lot to bring to the table. Like, for instance, they do have active noise canceling now, and I think for some people out there that might actually be really great, because prior to this, Samsung's Galaxy Buds never had active noise canceling. They do state that you can get all-day battery out of these. I don't know what that technically means. Does that mean it can go 24 hours? Does that mean it can go 8 hours? But anytime they improve the battery of these things, that is going to be very nice. Another thing that is nice about these ones is they do look like jelly beans, and I know a lot of people are going to make fun of these for looking like jelly beans, whereas the earpods or AirPods do look like something you'd put in your ear, like a Q-tip. So I know people are going to make jokes there, but honestly, I think these look pretty good. Apparently, the reason they want to make them like jelly beans is because they want to make sure they fit in your ear securely and comfortably as well. Because let's face it, a lot of times, a lot of people get these AirPods or these true wireless earbuds, and they want to wear them for long periods. So anytime the quality on these are going to be significantly better than previously, then that is great. You can see the design of these things are definitely different than the last two iterations of the Galaxy Buds. We had the Galaxy Buds, I think, from 2019, and then this year they did make the Galaxy Buds Plus, I do believe, and those are just pretty much slightly better than the previous Galaxy Buds that were the original Galaxy Buds from 2019. So it is great that they are improving these in a lot of different ways, and I think these are going to be very competitive, and I know why you would go with these over the competition, just due to the fact that they are designed around your Samsung Galaxy smartphone. They pair easily. You know, you'll get that quality out of them compared to budget oriented true wireless earbuds on the market. So that's something I really do like. So overall, just very interesting to say the least. Now, the next one on my list is actually about Google. Apparently, Google wants to shut down Google Play Music, and apparently, from what I'm hearing, is they want to migrate everybody over to YouTube Music. I mean, that does make sense because they want to try to get people to get on these subscription-based services. They want you to pay a fee and things like that. But the funny thing is, Google Play Music, as far as I remember, because I am a longtime user of Google Play Music, I do remember them having some type of subscription service, just like Spotify or just like Apple Music. I don't know how you're going to go about buying songs outright. I know in today's technology realm, a lot of people don't buy songs outright. I will have to say, sometimes it is nice buying your own songs outright, and on occasion I do end up buying my own songs outright for my purposes and for my needs. I'll buy like an MP3, I'll buy like whatever file I need. I will buy. Just buying it sometimes makes me feel really good about myself. Do we actually need to buy songs in 2020? Honestly, no. We don't really need to buy songs in 2020. It's just me being a purist sometimes of maybe owning a physical collection or even a digital collection makes me feel really happy about myself when it comes to music listening and things like that. And a lot of times you can actually get better sound quality when you download things directly to your device because, of course, you won't have to stream them. You have them locally. Another nice thing about having stuff stored locally is the fact that you never have to worry about if, like, for instance, Spotify removes a song, because never say never. I've heard cases where songs being copyright infringement or whatever the case may be, and for some reason they just say, well, it's too bad, we have to remove the song from this platform because it violated our policies and our terms of service. So that's another reason to download them. But yeah, it looks like Google Play Music will start shutting down in September. I actually own quite a few songs on Google Play Music because when it comes to the Android market space and when it comes to Android as a whole, there's really nowhere else to buy songs. So it was kind of like the iTunes for Android, if you look at it, and that's where I bought most of my songs. Luckily, if you do own a very big media base or you do own a lot of music on Google Play Music, you are going to be able to migrate them to YouTube Music, which is nice because of course we deserve to keep all of our purchases that we buy. That's also another thing. Even when, like, for instance, you own your own music library, it doesn't guarantee that you'll be able to keep it forever either. Like in this instance, what happened if Google Play Music shut down and then they wouldn't let us keep all of our downloads that we previously bought? We should have the right to keep them because we paid our hard-earned money for these things. In some scenarios, let's be honest, nothing is really guaranteed forever, which kind of sucks when you buy stuff. You want to make sure that your purchases are forever, but nothing is guaranteed, which is kind of sad. But yeah, it's interesting that they just want to get rid of this as a whole, and they want to migrate over to YouTube Music. They've had YouTube Music for quite some time now, and I don't know how many people are actually on board with YouTube Music. I know when it comes to music streaming services or music platforms, there is a lot of competition out there. Of course, we got Spotify, we got Apple Music, the Google Play Music application, now YouTube Music, and I'm sure there's a host of other ones that do host music on the internet, which you can either download or listen to. I guess it's just because this is an old, outdated platform, and they've had this platform for quite some time. They just feel like it is much more better to integrate it with YouTube, since they are always trying to work on YouTube, and maybe it just makes sense to just focus on YouTube Music for the time. And I can actually see that actually being a thing, which is, I guess, not really a bad thing. Personally, for me, I never actually tried YouTube Music. Maybe I should try YouTube Music and give it a go and see if I'm gonna like YouTube Music. The only thing I don't like a lot about all these different streaming services when it comes to music as a whole, I really wish a lot of these other alternatives on the market outside of Spotify would give you some type of freemium version. That's one thing I've always liked about Spotify. Sure, you don't get all the benefits of premium, and a lot of times people say, why even go with the free version of Spotify, because Spotify will bog you down. It has ads on top of your music, of course. You can't choose songs at random. That is true, but anytime something is free, even with limitations, it's good for the consumer, because I know some people out there don't have a lot of money to spend, and something is better than nothing. And then for the actual company, it is a win-win scenario, because not only is it good for the company, it is also good for things like the company, because they do win. They're still getting money even though you are using a freemium version of their actual application. Don't think Spotify is giving you a free version without getting paid. They're still getting paid by things like advertisers. They may be getting paid by the artist and things like that to cut some kind of deal here. And then on top of that, if they do have a freemium version, even if people aren't paying, there's still a premium version where people want to remove things like advertisements. They want to remove things like not allowing you to choose what type of song. They want to pay for that premium version. So with the combination of them getting ad revenue from the freemium version and people paying for the premium version, in the end, it really does work out for the company, and it works out for the consumer, because more choices are always better, not for the consumer, but also for the company as well. And that's something I wish more companies would actually focus on, a freemium version and a paid version, to give you those options for people who don't want to pay for it and don't mind things like advertisements and limitations to their service, as long as it works. But yeah, very interesting to say the least. And I think this is going to wrap up today's episode. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.